what we're doing is reinventing. We're thinking about reimagining what kind of a community we could have, building a network together in which we are addressing the issues that we can address together. We have a beautiful exploratory team that the Village Work has created. You could take the poll question down. I'll just move mine over. Very good. So could we have the presenter slide up? Wonderful. So I am Deborah Govreau, as I mentioned. I'm an exploratory team member. I'm a condo resident in downtown Sarasota, and I am an initiative consultant, as I mentioned, with the Patterson Foundation. This activity, this work, this idea of villages is very much aligned with the work of the Patterson Foundation, as it is all about strengthening people, organizations, and communities. And it does it by connecting, learning, sharing, evolving, and strengthening. So that's what we're about. And I want to give a shout out to the Patterson Foundation to say thank you, because I am passionate about this idea myself, for myself and my family. And I think it's a wonderful thing for the community as well, having spent time with the Age-Friendly Sarasota Initiative and Communities for All Ages. So thank you, the Patterson Foundation. They are supporting my time, Josephine's time, Abby's time, and so forth, to help bring this idea forward into the community. So the next individual that's part of our panel today is also part of the exploratory team, Mary Haber, who is a resident of Sarasota, and she was part of the DuPont Circle Village. I say was, she still is a member. You'll hear more from Mary in a moment. And also Sue Firestone Berger is an exploratory team. So again, shout out to the organization that Sue is with as the Aging System Policy Coordinator. That is the Sarasota County Health and Human Services Department. Probably many of you know her. It's a great pleasure to have Sue as part of the team, as well as the support of the Health and Human Services County in Sarasota County Health and Human Services Department. The last, and our guest speaker, is Joel Shapiro. Joel has been with the Village to Village Network, the national organization, for as a board member for the past 6 years. He is in his own world helping tech companies with business acceleration, and he is now leading a national initiative about reimagining villages. That is really about creating strategic partnerships and expanding the possibilities of neighbors helping neighbors. So right now, I'd like to move us into a very brief video. It's about 2.5 minutes, and it's a great overview of what we're talking about. Josephine?
Sorry, it's coming. 2 seconds. That was a little sooner than I thought, but it's coming. Give me a minute. And we're ready. Thank you for waiting and being patient.
This is a video prepared in California.
From the day we're born, we're aging. To age,
sorry, give me another minute. I'm so sorry.
Aging well means learning to embrace change.
The one thing they told me to not forget to do, I forgot to do. Okay, it's coming one more time. My biggest apologies.
I should have said it's 3 minutes, and then we would have had a couple of seconds.
It just came, I thought I was following, and here we go. Let me know if you guys can hear it, somebody, and it's playing now.
From the day we're born, we're aging. To age is to live. Aging well means learning to embrace change, to adapt to new circumstances, discover new resources, and continue to act in ways that result in a satisfying life. Staying in charge of our lives as we age is at the heart of Village Movement California, a growing network of over 40 membership organizations called villages. Created by and for Californians, a village connects people over the age of 50 to the community, programs, support, and expertise they need to continue living lives of purpose and promise in the places they call home. We need each other at every stage of life. But as we get older, our need for social connection and community becomes even more important. Villages are intentional communities that offer their members unlimited opportunities to connect, contribute, continue to learn, and ask for help when needed. As a member, you can stay connected through a wide array of programs that educate, stimulate, and prepare you for what's next in your life. Expressive arts, civic engagement, health and wellness, and life planning are just some of the pursuits we enjoy. In addition to members, volunteers of all ages connect compassionate neighbors of all generations to support each other with friendly visits, technology support, help around the house, and trips to the grocery store. If the pandemic and annual California fires have taught us anything, it's that we are living in a time of uncommon social change. Villages help us navigate this change. Knowing that we belong to a community of people who care for us, making new friends, and having the space to redefine our purpose and our own experience of aging. At Village Movement California, we invite you to join us as we continue to learn, explore, and help each other reinvent aging and reimagine what's next. Join the nearly 10,000 Californians already participating in their local village. Visit us at villagemovementcalifornia.org and click on Find Your Local Village, or contact us to learn more.
Thank you, Josephine. And now I'd like to direct you to Mary Haber. Mary's going to talk to you a little bit about her own experience with a village.
I think I can fill in what was not said in this beautiful video where you saw people, how they connected, where they were smiling, and it was just wonderful. As my own experience, I have lived and worked in Washington, D.C. for 40 years before moving to Sarasota about 10 years ago. I became a member of my Washington, D.C. neighborhood's village because of its many ways it connects people with each other and because of its offerings that sounded attractive to me. I'm still a member 12 years later, although I live in Washington, D.C., in Sarasota, but go back to D.C. whenever it's safe to travel. Through the village's emails and calendar, I stay informed of what they are doing in the DuPont Circle village of Washington, D.C., and how they keep evolving. It's not a stagnant organization. My experience with them has made me want to create a village in Sarasota. The Washington Village made it easy for me to join small groups of walkers, join themed discussion groups over coffee, lunch, or dinner, find somebody to go to a concert or movie with, find others to eat with at home who also enjoy cooking a tasty meal. Years ago, I started my weekends with an early morning walk in the National Arboretum, a 30-minute drive from where I lived. One Saturday, I ran into a group of neighbors. They invited me to join them every Saturday, not driving myself, but getting a ride. I still do this whenever I'm in DC. And while walking, and it's usually a 1 or 2 hour walk, depending on how much time we have, how long somebody wants to stay in that walk or leave early. We catch up on things, exchange recommendations on books to read, performances to see, classes to take, talks to attend, and all of us are now villagers. And when villagers hosted a chamber music group or invited a notable person to give a talk in their home, I could still attend even if every chair in the house was taken. People on a sofa would squeeze together to make room for me so that I could enjoy the event with them. When I needed to go to a hospital emergency room, a village volunteer drove me there, stayed with me, and took me home. I'm still fairly active and enjoy hiking and swimming and not only walking. Villagers who knew that I'm a hiker and knew that I don't like driving invited me to go along for their hikes in Shenandoah National Park. A Sarasota village could offer members the same or similar wonderful experiences that I had in Washington, D.C. The DC area now has 8 villages that connect members who want to live in their homes rather than moving to a retirement community. Both cities have downtown neighborhoods where people can walk to each other's homes, restaurants, to theaters, city parks, and they can drive to interesting museums and hiking trails in an hour or less. I'm a swimmer, and I like swimming early in the morning before lifeguards are on duty on Sarasota's beautiful beaches. But it's not a good idea to swim alone in the Gulf of Mexico or in any other open water. A Sarasota village might have other early risers who'd like to join me then. I also wanted to create a Sarasota village because there are so many people here that live in close proximity and don't know each other or move here and would like to make new friends. And a village offers this opportunity. And I would now like to introduce Joel Shapiro, who tells us how villages are set up and how they can get started and how they can get run. Here's Joel.
Well, Mary, thank you so much. You're a tough act to follow, but thank you. It is truly an honor and a privilege to be with you all here today. I'm joining you from Chicago, but I have very fond, warm memories of time spent on the white sand beaches in Siesta Key, and so I have a near and dear. I have very warm feelings about experiences in Sarasota, and I'm just so excited to watch as a group of people are coming together and mobilizing to bring this to life in the Sarasota area. Josephine, do you want to? Are the slides up? Thank you. I just thought I would share a couple thoughts to put what is happening in Sarasota in a broader context. Some people have heard of Village. Some people are just becoming aware of the Village concept. And I wanted to just talk a little bit about what has happened, what is happening, and what will be happening. And I really can't say it any better than what is expressed in the video that what we just watched and in the words of people like Mary. What I always say when I talk about people that come together to form a village is they're the kinds of people that started the farmers markets in their communities or served on the school boards, or there were connectors and doers in their community, and they're dedicated and committed to bringing people together. And it has been such a joy over my roughly 9 years being involved in villages, starting here in Chicago and then extending to other places throughout the country, to watch and get to know the kinds of people that are really trying to make their communities better. The first village started about 20 years ago in Boston, particularly in an area called Beacon Hill. And some people know about villages primarily because of Beacon Hill. It really was a group of people who were committed to remaining in their homes as they aged. And they decided they didn't want to wait for government or business to help them do that. And their solution was to band together. And what the original idea was really just to create a support network essentially a one place to call to get information or help to remain in one's home. And in some cases, that turned out what we like to call different types of services, like a little help, right? Which means anything from rides to help with technical support, to changing light bulbs and turning mattresses, to grocery delivery, anything that would really help to help people stay in their homes and remain as independent as possible for as long as possible. And then the villages tended to evolve to include some social programming, specifically to bind people together and offer different shared interest groups. So we have things like potluck dinners and some of the things that Mary was describing, hiking and coming together in various forces. And then things like mobilizing volunteers to really create more and more opportunities to connect people and serve people. And then some villages then developed into, and Beacon Hill was the example of that, into a paid staff model. Josephine, can you move to the next slide, please? So when we talk about villages, what we find is there are already a lot of organizations in any community that are focused on connecting people and are focused on serving older adults. What we've seen with the villages in their local communities is they tend to act as the connective tissue within a community. They're what we call the facilitator of aging in community, as you see on this slide. And they align with and support and amplify a number of different initiatives that are already happening in that community, but they bind it together and they make it possible to reach more people and engage more people. So what this slide represents, and what I believe is the true power of a village or a network of villages in any community, is they promote leadership development, they promote healthy and active aging, they create new opportunities for economic development, and they're becoming more and more so a platform for advocacy and examples of what we are doing well and what else we could be doing better to support people of all ages throughout the community. Josephine? So I just wanted to paint sort of this broader picture for you all, because what you're doing is part of a broader movement. And again, just to give you an idea of where we are in the maturity of that movement, I've divided these 20 years into roughly 4 different eras. And in the first era, we talked about, like Beacon Hill, as I shared earlier, was this first generation of villages getting started. This idea of neighbors helping neighbors, peer support, volunteer-driven organizations. And over that first roughly 8 years, about 50 communities formed throughout the country. As we all know, good ideas tend to spread. And when people started finding out through articles in the New York Times and other media sources, a lot of people would raise their hand and say, hey, we want that kind of organization in our community and we want to come together to form it. It was around that time that a group from Beacon Hill, the first village, worked with the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, and they formed what's called the Village to Village Network. That is a national association of villages that really have 2 purposes: helping communities get started and develop, and then helping existing villages evolve and continue to extend and reach other parts of the community. And so in that third area, we really saw a big growth of new communities throughout the country, developing, getting started, aligning with different types of organizations, to the tune of, we have now more than 250 villages across the country. We have concentration points, particularly in California, as you heard in the video, where we have over 40 villages. Mary talked about villages in the DC area, but I look at it even in the broader DC area, including Maryland and Virginia, where we have over 60 villages. And then in places like Boston and Albany, New York, where we have over 20 villages. So there are different areas that are emerging, and we had a lot of momentum. And then, like so many things, we were dramatically impacted by the impact of the pandemic and COVID. And one of the big strengths of villages, of course, is the coming together of people, of bringing people together to interact. And as we have all experienced, that type of interaction has changed drastically over the last year. And so what we've seen in the response to COVID is a pivoting, an adapting of what villages can do to connect people, to keep people engaged, and to support people in their communities. And so we have seen some heroic efforts across villages to meet the needs of people who were even more isolated than they were before, and who needed access to groceries, to support, to rides, and now we're seeing it to information and connecting to the ability to get vaccinated. So what that has sparked here in this last year is a real shift in what we are doing to not only maintain the value of what villages can do, but also think about and start to operate in a different way in what some of us are calling a post-COVID world, which of course we haven't quite reached. Josephine, could you switch to that new slide? Thank you so much. So part of what we've been thinking about at a national level, and then what's playing out at a local level, is who else and what else could we be doing and impacting with this wonderful concept of a village. And so when I got connected to Deborah in particular and heard about what was happening in Sarasota, what we have here is a wonderful blank slate, because you can learn from and adapt from what has happened so successfully over the last 20 years. And you have a unique opportunity to think about and operate in an even broader, even more impactful way. And it's part of what I'm so excited about, what's happening here in Sarasota and happening in other parts of Florida and happening in other parts of the country. And part of what we want to think about is how could we serve and impact more people? How could we make our operations more inclusive? How we can create operations that are funded and generate revenue in different ways so that we can have more people involved and develop more and more people. I set a little timer so I would be aware of the timing here. How we can include people of all ages in what we do. There's some wonderful examples of activities and programs that many villages do with children, with young adults, with people that are emerging in the workforce. And there's so much more that we can do. And we're thinking about how we can make villages more adaptive to the needs of our communities. And my belief and the belief of others is one way we can do that is through strategic partnerships, working with healthcare organizations, technology organizations, existing organizations in the community, both for-profit and nonprofit, all with the shared interest of raising up what we do in our community, who we serve, and giving people more and more opportunities to connect to people, to new ideas, to new opportunities, and find new ways to contribute and grow and support those people amongst them. Next slide, please, Josephine, and I'll wrap up with this idea. So we had a national gathering in October, a virtual gathering, of course, this year. And I was part of a group of people that determined it was really time for us to reimagine what villages could do. And I put here nationally, but we have also started to connect in communities internationally. And so what we are talking about as a national effort is how do we take existing villages and new emerging villages and really think in terms of collective action. How can we mobilize differently that will not only create a more sustainable, vibrant national, international movement, but also will make it more possible for individual villages right down at the local level to operate and engage more and more people. So there's a lot more to come in terms of what is happening. We are in probably mile one of this marathon, but we believe that the efforts of what's happening here in Sarasota is one piece of a broader building block of activity, and that we can together create a true movement that we can look back 5 years, 10 years, 20 years from now and say that the first 20 years was just the beginning, but that we truly took things to many different, more robust levels, and that we were part of not only helping individuals age, but we were part of our communities and our cities and our nation to really embrace the new opportunities of longevities and shift what we have been into something that we could be. And so again, I'm going to pause here. I'm happy to answer any questions. I haven't been monitoring the chat, but if there's anything that I can speak to or elaborate on, it would be my honor to do so. I can put my contact information in the chat as well, and I'm happy to talk to anybody individually in a follow-up call. And I just want to thank you all and congratulate you all on where you are. And I'm just so excited to see how this initiative keeps building and going forward. Thank you.
So if you have a question, if you want to raise your hand, or you could put it in the chat, Abby will recognize any of you that have your hand up and have a question for Joel or for anyone so far.
Oh, Marnie, I think, Marnie, go ahead and unmute yourself, please.
Sorry.
You're fine.
I'm also typing, but nobody. I have a couple of questions. I'm with Unidos now, and we serve the Latinx community here in Sarasota and also in Manatee County. And some of the things that we've grappled with is, for example, liability. Like, you know, how do you handle liability with drivers, you know, taking somebody to the hospital? Another thing is there any way to, I mean, I'm thinking if you have a village and I don't know if there's any screening that you need to do so that the people joining are safe people. You know, when you do this village and somebody needs a request, is there a contact person, or, you know, is it a one? So those are my three questions.
Marnie, thank you. And the describing is part of, it's exactly why the Village to Village Network formed, because these are the types of questions that many groups are dealing with and are trying to find the right thing for their organization. And so we have put together some resources at the national level, and then we work with individual groups as well to figure out what makes sense. To address your three main points, and we could spend a lot of time on this, so I'm happy to follow up with you or help connect you to some people that can help address those. First of all, the issue of inclusivity and reaching more people is something that, as we've all experienced, has always been important, but couldn't be any more important as we go forward. So that's, I wanted to just touch on that. The issue of liability is and how you work through that is again, it is part of the challenge of any organization. And yes, there are ramifications for having rides. And so there is a lot of work that has to be done to put those safeguards in place and make sure you're doing that in a way that is right for for your community. But the good news is there's a lot of people that have done it before you. Secondly, going back to things like who to call. There's a number of different kinds of villages, and I didn't want to go into the details, but some villages have paid staff members, sometimes one. Some villages have half a dozen or more. And then there are villages that have all volunteer support. And with anything, of course, someone needs to own it. There has to be one person at least, or a group of people that have to come together to be that person to call, to manage those logistics and be that coordination. So it's really up to the people that come together to form the village to decide what makes sense and who are the people in the beginning. And that can evolve, and often does. So the people in the first year or two, sometimes that evolves as more and more people are brought in and more groups are brought together. So that's sort of, so the answer is yes, there needs to be some point of contact along the way. And then I just want to make sure I hit your other points. What was the third point that
The third point is I was a teacher for, I don't know, 38 years. And then I worked with an aging population as a volunteer, and we always had to have such screening. So, you know, that's just a concern from what I've been involved with.
Yes, and it's critical for lots of reasons, and most villages go through an extensive vetting process for their volunteers and for the service providers that they align with. So yes, that is something that is done and is the right thing to do. And there are different things that you can learn from in terms of how other organizations can do that.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for your questions, and I'm happy to follow up afterwards. Was there anything else?
Yeah, we do have another one from the chat, Joel, from Patty, and she's asking, what is the first step in launching a new village?
Finding the right people. Finding the right people, and I mean that in the sense of, you know, the village that I first became involved with here in Evanston, Illinois. It was a group of people that came together, and I was not part of the initial group. I came in a little bit later, but they called it the dining room, the kitchen cabinet. Sorry, it was one person who read about Beacon Hill Village and then went to her network. And again, as I said earlier, it's often the people that have started the farmers markets and served on the school board. So it's often really well-connected people, but bringing people together and finding a sort of a common language for what is needed and what is possible in your community is the critical first step. And what I mean by that is, this is not a cookie cutter solution. We are not offering village franchises yet. The beauty of the spirit, I say that kiddingly, the spirit of the village and what I love about it most is it's grassroots, it's bottom up, it comes from the community. And so what I would say is the first thing is a coming together and looking out at what exists, what could be, and perhaps most importantly, and sometimes what gets overlooked, is what assets do we have in our community that we can align with and grow and build off of. And by assets, I mean existing organizations, I mean people, I mean other services that may not have anything to do with older adults, but in connection. For example, faith-based organizations as one example. Just going and talking to those organizations and finding the tribe of people who in that community say, we want this type of mobilized effort in our community, and we are willing to step up and be part of it, is the the most important first step. There
That's
are several other steps from there that are around more the operationalization. How about the operationalization of the process? You know, do you form a nonprofit? Do you find a fiscal sponsor that can help in the creating the nonprofit? Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think that's like the perfect, we couldn't have planned it better, the perfect lead in for Deborah Govero to jump in, and that's her piece as well. So it's a continuation of, and thank you. And if you have other questions that you put in the chat, we certainly will do our best to get to those before the end of the session. And if not, we'll be in touch via email with the answers. So Deborah.
Thank you, Josephine. Thank you so much, Joel. I appreciate so much your sharing. So the Sarasota Village so far has come together. We've created an exploratory team. We've learned a lot. We joined the Village to Village Network. We've defined a service area because this is a community activity. And Sarasota Village may be just the beginning of villages here in the region that there, you know, we've invited many of you here because you're doing work that could really benefit from or contribute to the work of a village, and it may be an idea for your area. So as we look forward, we're looking to really activate a very exciting step that we've taken, which is creating a fiscal sponsorship with the Friendship Centers. David Blihar, are you still here?
Yes.
David? Okay, David, we have just 2 seconds, but I just want to give a shout out to you and the Friendship Centers. We have established a fiscal sponsorship, so the village is able to receive tax exempt gifts, and also the Friendship Centers will keep us in the mode of a strong accounting world. So we'll create a board, and we'll involve all of you who are interested in being involved, because this is really to develop something together in community. And so rather than go on, what I'm going to say is Sue Firestone Berger is here with us right now to talk about how you can join us, how you can get involved. And after Sue, maybe we'll have an opportunity for a couple more questions, but moving right along.
Great. Deborah, thank you so much. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, great. Good morning. I think many of you already know me, and I thank you again for being here. So as Deborah said, you know, up to this point, we heard about Mary's personal experiences with the DuPont Circle Village in Washington, and sort of what sparked her desire to want to create a village here in Sarasota. Deborah's talked a little bit about our exploratory team, how we got started, where we are now, and what's ahead. Of course, Joel shared his expertise, including a little bit of a village history, what's happening on a national level, and many of the opportunities and benefits of creating a village. And you've seen a glimpse of what's possible through that California village marketing video, which I think is really a fabulous tool. So I think, as everyone's wondering, what now? We would like for you to join us to be part of this journey, to help build upon the foundation that we've already started with our exploratory team, and help in whatever capacity that you're able. So many of you have already been involved in the Age Friendly initiative, and some of you since the very, very beginning. And I think you'll see that many of the concepts that are part of the village are also in line with age-friendly objectives and strategies across all the 8 domains. And Josephine has put up the domains of livability just as a little bit of a refresher for everybody. So as we know, villages seek to connect community, neighbors, and enhance quality of life and well-being for all of the members. So this includes things such as social education, volunteer opportunities, as well as creating some connections with supportive services. And we heard many great examples from Mary's own experiences. and, you know, including her hiking and her swimming and driving. So I think it was great to hear a firsthand experience. So this is your opportunity to be part of something wonderful and meaningful. And we need a really good, dedicated and cohesive team. As Joel said, villages have many commonalities, but each village is unique to the community where it's founded. So we're looking to all of you who are part of our Sarasota community. So how could you be engaged? We're asking again, in whatever capacity is available. Some of you could share your expertise. Some of you might want to come on board as an exploratory team member and further grow the village, which will include things like creating a community survey and a community partner survey, helping spread the word, creating a timeline as we move along. Some of you might just want to know more through a one-on-one conversation with any one of us or Joel. And some of you might just want to be kept updated, share ideas and find out about our progress. So we have one final poll for you today. If you could just take a moment, Abby or Josephine, could you get that poll up for us? If you just take a minute to get that completed.
So the poll is: choose the top 3 services that you feel are of most importance: health, exercise, and wellness, connecting, engaging virtually, getting information and support, expanding your knowledge, experiencing culture, or support for family members. So go ahead and pick the 3. You can answer 3 on this one that you find are of most importance. Not to say that the others aren't, but that you would prioritize in this circumstance.
This is Bernice. Is this for us personally, or the people that we, serve, or the target population that we're talking about with the Sarasota Village?
It would be for the target population. What do you feel is most important for our community? But that certainly can include you personally as a member of this community.
I'm almost 50, so yes, possibly.
All right, I think we'll give it about 5 more seconds for anyone else to add their answers. Go ahead and end now and share our results.
Great. Getting information and support, exercise, and connecting and engaging virtually. So, and support for family members was up there too, but overwhelmingly information and support. Great, thank you all very much. And as we move forward, there's going to be a lot of opportunities for community partners and collaborations. So we know that that's on the horizon as well. So there'll be a brief survey that will be sent to you after this session. And then we will follow up with you after we get those surveys returned, just some information about where your interest level lies. And we really look forward to working with you as we move forward to reinvent and reimagine what's next. And we thank you so very, very much for joining us today.
Do you want to, if anybody has any questions for any of the presenters or about anything you've heard today, we have a couple more minutes. If you want to raise your hand, Abby will call on you to unmute your mic. And if not, there.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you go, Abby, go.
I was going to say, Bernice, I know you popped some questions in the chat, so I didn't know if you wanted to ask one or a couple of those that you'd like to ask.
The first question was was answered after I posted it. I think a lot of these will be figured out as we move forward, but maybe just the first question would be related to how would the village interface with all of these organizations and services and things that are already in existence, even networks, social or professional networks. How I don't know, in the experience, Joel, with other villages, how do you avoid duplication or ensuring that you're not reinventing the wheel, but instead like linking the services? And so I that's sort of like a big picture question that maybe would take a lot of someone's time to figure that out, actually, in terms of avoiding duplication. So that was one of the questions I was interested in finding out.
I would address it this way, Bernice, and then I'm if anybody else wants to chime in. I think what the last 10 or 12 months have demonstrated is a little bit of overlap is okay. We have a lot of people that we can reach in different ways. And so particularly in the early days of a village, I think it's about reaching out and having conversations. It's really that simple in the sense of trying to identify where there are gaps, but where there are opportunities to support and amplify what's already happening to start. And then some of what happens over time is it's revealed what other opportunities need to be addressed in different ways. So there's not, I wish there was a roadmap. Exactly. It's a little bit of finding your way and in an individual community, because so many communities are so different. But what we've found in many communities is there are bridges. There are people who operate as bridges. A lot of the people that are involved in villages are sitting on boards of other organizations, are working at other organizations. And that's what sort of fuels the collaboration, particularly in the first couple of years.
Could I just chime in? You know, we're part of an exploratory team. So we're trying to figure this out, which is why we are asking people to come into it. We're not coming in with all the answers. We are looking to the community to help decide what they're looking for, and if this is indeed an option for our community. There does seem to be quite a bit of interest, so we're hoping that as we move forward, we'll continue to grow that interest and enthusiasm for it.
Any other questions for any of the presenters? Abby, were there any other in chat?
Bernice, were your other questions answered, or would you like to?
I'm so sorry.
No, you're totally fine.
One of the questions is really rooted in our own experience with the Alzheimer's Association. I've only been with the association for about a year and a half. And I think one of the things that we struggle with is that the people who are often the most isolated are the ones that are most difficult to reach. And we've been really struggling with how to do that, even before COVID, but even now in the face of COVID. And so those are people who don't necessarily have access to the internet or have access to this kind of information easily. People of lower socioeconomic status, communities of color. And so I'm just trying to think about how this, how this could be structured in a way where those people could be reached, because I know that with the association, we're really struggling with that. And so I would imagine it would be a similar situation here with this village. And so that was just a comment, and more of a comment or an observation of my own experience, which is limited. I've only been with the association a year and a half, and I don't know Sarasota County very well. So maybe there are instances where this is really working, being able to access, make these services accessible to certain people that are difficult to reach, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. I think you've hit one of the challenges, as you've said, Bernice, that all of us do have in providing services and helping to make sure that the needs of the community are met in every area. But together, really, it's together, we have a greater opportunity to do something that really weaves and supports what's going on already with what's needed, and to be able to work in community, in a smaller community. One of the things that Joel said early on to me was, as far as he's concerned, it would be great if there was as many villages as Starbucks. So you think about that, an organization not having a huge service area, but having a relatively small community where our ability to reach out and touch, to connect, to understand what's going on becomes greater if we're in a smaller group. So I just put plant the seed, depending on what communities you may be participating in, those of you who are here. I noticed that Aging in Paradise, Susie Brenner was on the call. She had to jump off over in Longboat Key. She left a message. I'm going to disclose because it is in the chat. She said, I want to talk more about what we can do. I want to have one of these in our area. So, but these are the challenges that we need to address as we go forward and as we reinvent and as we reimagine what could be, as we have all been doing already, as COVID has taken our worlds and just created a whole new need to look at how we're doing things and what we're doing and what we could do differently so that we explore new possibilities. We're getting to the end of our time frame right here. And I'd like to, I guess, there's Mary. We want to explore together in the village. And if you could switch to the next slide, Josephine. Down at the bottom of the slide is the Patterson Foundation's Sarasota Village page. You could go to the TPF website and look in the current initiatives. You'll see what TPF has posted about the village. And we want to thank you. We want to invite you. Please fill out the survey, participate with us, join us. We want to do this together. So thanks everybody for joining, and have a fabulous day, and we'll look forward to connecting with you more in the future.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.